Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Monday, March 4th. This is episode 81. Matt Roy, Chuck McIntyre, Don Harris on tap today. We got a lot of stuff going on, but gentlemen, how are you? Don just coming back from Arizona. How was it?
It was beautiful. Very nice. Great time seeing my son and his wife, and caught a spring training game and ate some good food. Enjoyed downtown Gilbert, Arizona.
I just love that whole area.
Wow.
Gilbert,
Awesome.
Surprise, Scottsdale, Phoenix, Tempe. It's
hard to beat.
It's so beautiful out there,
Very
especially
nice.
this time of year before it gets really, really hot.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely want to get there at this time of year because in about another month or so, it's unbearable.
Yeah, Chuck, how was the weekend?
Relatively incident-free, just the way I like it, Matthew.
Just relatively, though.
Yes.
Well, I had a solid weekend as well.
Matt, how was your weekend? I apologize for not asking.
I mean, it's fine. Guess I'll forgive you. It was good. Last weekend went to a bachelor party, so this weekend I just stayed at home. I just was still recovering, I think, at this point. So stayed home, did chores, worked on Saturday, did laundry and all that stuff. But it leads to a good question. What is your guys' least favorite chore that your wives have you do? Or that you do around the house? Because I have one.
There's no doubt it's cleaning the leaves out of the pool skimmer baskets,
Okay.
especially when the water's cold. It's brutal. It's so gross.
What about you, Chuck?
I don't know. I have to think about that because that's the best thing about time, Matthew, is that you can kind of work your way out of those situations over time to you only do the chores that you are kind of,
That's true.
that you can kind of agree with.
Luis is pointing at his head. He's like, yeah, he's playing chess when we're all playing checkers over here.
That's
It just came to mind because my least favorite is laundry. I cannot stand doing laundry. Mainly because like my laundry's fine because I have like a place for everything. But Jordan has like 3 different places for a sweatshirt. So like I'll put it one place and then she'll be like, where's this sweatshirt? And then it's in the other place that it's supposed to be. So I never know where any of her stuff goes, and so it's my least favorite
And
chore.
see, I hate piles of anything. So when I get home and it's late and I'm not doing anything else, I can, do whatever I do that entertains me at night and then also at the same time do laundry. So I'm not in charge of putting the laundry away for my wife or any of the kids, but I make little piles, and so I make neat piles, and I don't like baskets full of clothes.
You sort it out for her.
So every day I do a load of laundry, and I don't mind doing it. It's now very routine.
So I've been married 33 years.
Right.
I did all my own laundry in college. We moved in together on May 1st, and we got married on May 4th. And I had laundry in the basket. The first week I was married, I went to go do my laundry, and it wasn't there. I went to my drawers and opened the drawers, and my socks, underwear, T-shirts, shorts, everything were folded straighter than military grade, like it was a department store
Wow.
display.
I almost want to bring a little tear to my eye.
Jordan doesn't do that for me.
And it has been that way for the last 33 years. I have not put a thing of soap into in 33 years.
Well, we all use Tide Pods now.
Tide Pods, whatever. I wouldn't know how to turn it on. I know how to turn the dryer on sometimes when I want something warm.
See, I don't want to get on like a huge tangent here, but Jordan and we're quickly figuring out the division of labor here. Like the kitchen is my
good way of putting
area. Like I can't stand when there's like something sticky on the counter or like a crumb. Like I can't stand it if I'm OCD in that way. And she also just doesn't take the trash out. So I'd like, that's my duty.
Yeah.
She does laundry. We divide things up. But laundry is just my least favorite thing in the world. Anyway, now that we're 5 minutes in, let's get to a little bit of sports here.
I say vacuuming. It just came to me. Because our vacuum weighs like 900 pounds. Why, I have no idea. It sucks doesn't suck in a good way. But to carry that thing up the steps, man, my little chicken wings over here, it's very difficult.
Dyson was having a huge sale on Amazon this weekend.
Really?
You could get a new vacuum.
The Dyson.
No, I'm not saying the vacuum doesn't work. It just weighs
I know that you're not saying it
exponentially
doesn't
more
work.
than I think it should weigh.
Jordan and I had a perfectly working vacuum, and then last year for Christmas we got a new vacuum because the other one also weighed about 1,000 pounds. And
those Dysons, they've done a lot with them.
Yeah, no, they're amazing.
Okay.
But anyway,
I'll take your word for it.
we have a lot going on. We're going to talk the Jerry Jones comments from the NFL Combine when he was sitting on his bus. I don't know why it was while he was sitting on his bus, but that's what that happened there.
It's tradition.
Caitlin Clark breaking the all-time scoring record and her impact on women's sports. And Don's about to sigh. And Victor Wembanyama's dazzling performances in the last 2 games. And maybe the Spurs finally turning a corner. Maybe he's speeding up the timeline for how good they're going to be and how soon. We'll talk about that as well. But first, as always, this is episode 81, so we will say what 81 reminds us of, whether that's an event, whether that's a jersey number. For me, it's Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens is always 81 in my head. Maybe it's just because I was growing up in that, when he was an Eagle doing the sit-ups in his driveway and then became a Cowboy and went from there. But for me, it's Terrell Owens is the first one 81 is synonymous with.
I'll go Tim Brown.
I think it's T.O. for me, but tip of the cap to the great Carl Eller of the Purple People Eaters of the Minnesota Vikings, who had the worst toupee in NFL history as he got older.
D lineman?
Yeah.
Wearing 81?
Yep.
If that doesn't chap your ass, I don't know what does. Like, I hate this whole new single digit thing that people can wear single digits that aren't
Skill
that are
position players.
not even skill position players that aren't quarterbacks or kickers. Like, to me, skill position should be 80 to 9 or 89 and then 11 to 19 or 10 to 19.
Yeah.
I can't stand all of the jerseys now. So like 81 being a D lineman just really hurts my soul.
You sound like the old man. Get off your lawn.
I am.
That makes us proud that something like that is making
bothers
you
you.
angry.
I
good.
have certain things like that where I'm just like,
Okay.
God, this sucks. Also 81, you said Tim Brown. Torrey Holt should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. He's not yet. Art Monk, also in the Hall of Fame there. Owen Daniels of Texans lore and the Broncos Super Bowl champion in 2015. He was 81. And then in 1981, the Raiders defeated the Eagles 27-10 in the Superdome. Jim Plunkett was the Super Bowl MVP. Cincinnati's quarterback Ken Anderson was the AP MVP in the NFL that year. Georgia defeated Notre Dame to win the college national championship.
Herschel Walker.
Bob Gibson got into the Hall of Fame that year on the first ballot. Bob Gibson, obviously famous for his 1.12 ERA in the 1968 season, the year of the pitcher. He won the Cy Young and the MVP that year, and they lowered the mound because of his dominance and other pitchers' dominance that year.
Denny McClain.
I know you have something to say about
I
that.
do. It brings up a great memory, and it again a life lesson learned very early on when I was first starting my career. Bob Gibson was made available. He was doing some charity work at a hospital here in San Antonio, and I'd always heard about how mean and bad of a guy as Bob Gibson was. That, and he'd always used to say, I don't hate this group of people or that group of people. I hate everybody equally. But fierce competitor, and it turned out to be one of the coolest things I ever got to do. He was super nice, super friendly, very engaging, thoughtful.
Really?
And so it went from, what is your perception and what can you go find out on your own that maybe isn't exactly what the narrative is?
Maybe it was because it was after his playing career, and he was,
Or maybe he was, had a bad encounter with maybe a reporter here and a reporter there, and all of a sudden, a narrative gets struck where it's really not true. Or at
Although
least it wasn't for me.
100%.
Although you and I are both in agreement, the most rotten person we've ever interviewed is
Go ahead and say you, and let's see if it jogs my memory.
Martina Navratilova.
Okay, well, I don't know if I'd put her at the very top of my list, but she might be in the top 10 now that you
Really?
jogged the memory.
Why?
She was just an.
Yeah, just
Is this a story you want to tell on the podcast?
well, just
or is
doesn't like people that look
I saw
like
her.
reporters.
I saw her kind of. I don't know if it was cuss out, but certainly scold a woman in a wheelchair for asking for her autograph.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty. That's
That
pretty
was
messed
pretty
up.
bad. Leaving the McFarland Tennis Center.
That's my Jay Will story.
Really?
Yep.
All right, let's get to a couple other things. So Dodgers defeated the Yankees 4-2 in 1981. Indiana defeated North Carolina 63-50
Isaiah Thomas.
to win the NCAA men's title. Celtics defeated the Rockets in Larry Bird's first NBA title, 4-2, excuse me. Islanders defeated the Minnesota North Stars to win the Stanley Cup, and Bill Rogers won the Valero Texas Open, as we are now less than a month away from that. So, with that being
Who was
said,
the Finals MVP that year? Celtics over Rockets.
I know you know. I don't know.
Cedric Cornbread Maxwell.
All right, there's
Nice.
your daily dose of things that we don't know that only Don knows.
Did Bill Rogers win the British in 81?
He did win a major. I think you're right. He did win. I think it was the British Open.
Now affectionately known as the Open.
Championship.
The Cowboys letting some players go. So, not official as of yet, but news came out over the weekend that they are unlikely to re-sign Tyron Smith, Tyler Biadasz, and are now thinking of letting go of Michael Gallup. So, 3 guys that have played some major roles for the Cowboys over the last few years, especially Tyron Smith, now going into his 14th season, I believe. Out of those 3 guys, who do you think will be felt the most in terms of a loss, if it does in turn out that all 4 of them are, or all 3 of them are going to be gone?
I don't think they miss any of them really. I mean, when they have to, what they have to do with their cap to sign the guys they need to sign. Tyron Smith, I mean, how healthy has he been in recent years? I mean, he's a great player, Hall of Fame player. Don't discount what he did over the course of his career, but what are you going to do for me lately? I think of that question, it might be Biadasz, who's played a lot. He's a fighter. He scraps in there, but he's replaceable, and I think Gallup's replaceable. So I think these are necessary moves in order to do what they need to do.
Yeah, I'll go with Biadasz too, since he's the center of the offensive line, the captain up there. I'm going to miss him in the locker room too because he's such a great soundbite.
Yeah, he's a great interview.
So I will say Biadasz as well.
I don't think Michael Gallup's that big of a loss. I mean, they signed him hoping that he would be the number 2. He looked okay. He got hurt, and he was just never the same after he got hurt. I mean, this year he was a complete disappointment. Last year he was a complete disappointment.
He had flashes this year, but you're right. He's not the same player he was before the injury.
He's not, and that stinks because I think he showed a lot of potential. And this is nothing against him as like a person or anything, but he sucked on the field. Oftentimes, Jalen Tolbert replaced him. Oftentimes, they brought in Brandon Cooks because of his inefficiency on the field. So I don't think Michael Gallup's going to be felt very much at all.
I think the good news is that at least Michael Gallup got paid, and despite the injury, was given that second contract. So, I that's a blessing, obviously.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you guys. Biadasz will be the biggest loss if, in fact, all 3 of those players do end up gone. He is only 26. He is at least serviceable, if not a top half center in this league. Zach Martin plays really well alongside of him. Tyler Smith plays well alongside of him. He's the center of that line. So I think his loss would be the biggest out of the 3. But I did see a tweet. I don't remember who exactly it was from, but it basically said if Tyron Smith leaves, he's the latest on a long list of players whose talent has been wasted by the Cowboys, who's all-world talent. You have the likes of DeMarcus Ware, the Jason Wittens of the world, the Des Bryants of the world, the Sean Lees, that his talent has been wasted by the Cowboys because of their non-winning, because they haven't been able to get to the pinnacle. Would you guys agree with that, or would you not?
No. I mean,
you don't waste it.
Great players on really good teams, but that doesn't diminish. I think what they like. You can't have it both ways, right? If the organization had them, they turned out to be really good players. All of these, some of those are going to be Hall of Famers. Then how can you say that the Cowboys wasted their talent?
Yeah, because was Karl Malone's talent wasted in Utah because they didn't win a championship? He was a great player. He's one of the top.
You could argue that.
No. Stockton and Malone are 2 of the greatest players of all time. They just happen to go against Michael Jordan. Sometimes you don't win it, but it's not a waste.
But, to play devil's advocate, they haven't gone up against Michael Jordan. Oh, they might have, Tom Brady, but they didn't. They never faced Tom Brady because they never made it to the Super Bowl.
Right.
I think the point of the tweet and the point of the sentiment there is like they never made it to a conference championship. They barely won playoff games when those guys were there. I mean, they should have won the Des game, but that's a whole nother discussion. So I guess you could look at it and be like, those are wasted seasons and in turn wasted talent, but if you don't look at it as wasted seasons, then I guess you're not thinking of it that way.
Every team who's ever lost in a championship probably had a Hall of Famer on that team, and I wouldn't say his talent was wasted. I don't think Charles Barkley's talents were wasted. I don't think,
Yeah, I mean, just look the way we look at the 49ers, right? I mean, really good team over the last 5 years, and yet no Super Bowls.
Yeah.
You would think that not that their talent's been wasted, but they've underachieved, though, right?
I don't know. I don't know that, especially as I get older, I'm not necessarily equating everything with you win it all or you suck. I'm not there.
You're very much of the Giannis lore that it's not a failure. That's what Giannis said last year when they lost to the Heat. But
I think of Patrick Ewing comes to mind because he was so overhyped in New York, and he was a great, great talent, and they never won it. But again, they had Jordan in their way, and Patrick Ewing's a great, great player, even though he didn't win one. Not a lesser player. Now, when we judge players based on their resumes, it does matter if you win them or not, but it's not a waste.
Wow, you just said Patrick Ewing, and that I think I would put him in my top 10 of people that I didn't like interviewing. So thanks for jogging
the memory there.
Yeah.
The Knicks made it to what, one finals with that group?
They lost to the Spurs in '99.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the year that they got the Game 7 against Reggie Miller and the Pacers, right? In the East.
They beat Miami on a lucky bounce by Allen Houston.
I think I'm remembering that right, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Also, wanted to talk about Jerry Jones. So he clarified his all-in sentiments a little bit, saying that, for example, with 24, they're not going to draft a quarterback for the future because they want to help their team now. He basically clarified by saying that they're going to sign free agents for this year. They've also signed Mike Zimmer and other coaches to 1-year contracts. When you hear that and you see the details and you kind of think about the details of what all-in means, what does that make you think? Is that any different than how they've kind of approached things in the past? And what do you think the difference will be as we go forward? Chuck?
That's a really good question, Matthew. I'm not really sure because it's, like even Jerry sounding a little on the tough side about, well, Dak's got a contract and we've got these other things that are more important right now. And, the last time he tough talked publicly about where he stood or where the organization stood, Dak ended up with the second highest paid contract in the universe for football players. And then, same thing with Zach Martin. It's like you're going to make a stand and say, we're not budging, we're not going to do it. And then all of a sudden, well, Zach Martin ends up with a pretty nice little deal because he played hardball with Jerry. So some of this stuff, I think at this point, it's fair to say I'm taking with an ion of salt because we really don't know what is going to happen in some of this. If we base it on what Jerry said, some of the things make sense, right? What he said months ago, which was directed at Dak, you can't make all the money. You've already gotten your big contract. Now it's CD's turn to get his big contract. Now it's Micah's turn to get his big contract. And can you do all three of those things if Dak wants all this money or if his agent wants all this money, his camp wants all this money? I don't know. They've been pretty crafty with how they've parceled this stuff out in the past. But what would be the worst thing that could happen if you let Dak roll on the last year of his contract? You sign him to a finite number of years. Both parties agreed. Why not let him be on the hot seat like Mike McCarthy? And
I think he is.
Because his cap number is so big, you can't add anybody else.
Well, you can for the future. Dak's 1 year on his contract notwithstanding. Like you can get CD and you can get Micah all locked up if you go into that thinking that, well, we're going to get these guys done then, and then we'll see what happens with you, Dak, at the end of this.
Tom, what about you with the all-in statements from him? What is that?
I'm not smart enough to know how the NFL cap works, okay? So I'm not going to pretend to know. It sounds to me, reading Michael Gallup, who does know, that this means that Jerry is not going to extend Dak now, but instead add those 2 voidable years to get some of his cap figure relief immediate to sign the guys that he wants to sign and roll with Dak under contract, but with the risk of losing him to free agency. Now, he can always go back in there and negotiate with anybody when it's over, but I think that it sounds like they're leaning towards not doing the extension this offseason. Maybe it's in the middle of the season. I don't know.
It sounds like they're trying to speak out of both sides of their mouth a little bit.
It's Jerry negotiating.
Well, 1, you want Dak long term, and 2, you're all in on this year. So which is it? Do you want Dak long term, which is going to cost you $60 million a year, $55 to $60 million a year, or do you want to go all in for this season? If you go all in for this season, it sounds like there's asses on the line, whether that's McCarthy, Zimmer, half of the players on the roster, Dak, CD, everybody. If you're all in, that means that nothing is bolted down. Everybody's on the table for trade. Everybody's on the table for extension. Everybody's on the table for firing.
I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And if that's what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do. And maybe they are behind closed doors, but they're hedging their bets a lot. When first he said all in when he was at the Senior Bowl, and now he's like, this is what we mean by all in. We're not going to take a linebacker. We're not going to take a quarterback for the future. We're going to get someone who can help us now. It just doesn't make it. They're not meshing. The
Jerry's going to say whatever he
meshing.
can say publicly to help him get to where Chuck said he needs to be, which is getting all three of them to agree to play together for the right money each, and showing them all three the pie and saying, okay, we want you guys to split this pie this many ways. You got to leave some over here for a running back and a linebacker.
There's something else I wanted to get into with this, but I'll save it for Thursday. We got too much going on. So let's get to Wemby a little bit. So last night, it seems like every night he's doing something that nobody's ever done before, which he pretty much is. Last night, he went for 31-12, 6 assists, 6 blocks. He's the first rookie in NBA history with back-to-back games of at least 25, 10, 5, and 5. In his last 5 games, he's averaging 25 points, 11.6 rebounds, 5.6 assists, and 5 blocks. At this point, I struggle when I'm creating these rundowns to come up with something that we haven't talked about before, because when it comes to him, because it's like every single night he does something I've never seen before. I showed it to Jordan last night. We were sitting at home, and I was watching a little bit of the game, but I was off and on between that and something else. And I see the step back 3-pointer that he had over Miles Turner, I think it was, and he just hits it and he runs back down court like nothing ever happened. I was just like, people who are 7'3" aren't supposed to do this.
Between the legs twice,
the behind the back pass, like he looks like Allen Iverson,
the
but a foot and a half taller.
Was
like
the most impressive.
And that's why I struggle sometimes, because I feel like every time we come on this podcast, it's like, oh my God, he's amazing, but they're 13 and 47, so it makes it difficult to talk about them as a whole.
Well, the last two games, the Friday night game over Oklahoma City was really special. Mm-hmm. And you could tell the way the crowd reacted after that game. And that was a breakthrough game for them, because it looked like they were going to blow that game. And they didn't. And then the crowd, the last 2 games, has been going nuts. I mean, Carlisle said last night that building is wild. There's something going on with Wemby Mania right now that wasn't the case even 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I think a lot of Spurs fans who have tuned out because of the record are missing something really special. I was texting with Mark Spears, the NBA writer, today. I was like, this Rookie of the Year thing's settled, right? Like, I'm not looking at this through Spurs-colored glasses, am I?
That's over.
And he said, no, it shouldn't be. It should be over. He goes, I don't know that it will be unanimous, but that kid is ridiculous.
It should be over.
It should be over.
I watched the game last night, and that to me was the best performance they had as a team, working well together, playing hard. And I think what shocks me more than anything else is watching that game last night. He was winded. He was gassed, and yet he still did what he did. Imagine what's going to happen if he can ever get to the point where energy is not a problem.
Well, he's also been playing every minute of fourth quarters the last couple of games. Like,
yeah, you can tell they're trying to stretch him and push him to go places that he's not real comfortable going right now. But again, it goes back to, even if he's winded, like he got a rebound the other night and it led to a 3-pointer in the corner. It was last night, actually, where he was gassed, but because of his wingspan, he was still able to corral the ball that was, careening off. And, that's the physical gifts. What's going to happen when the stamina starts to match the physical gifts? Look out.
And that was something that Wemby said on Thursday night after that game against Oklahoma City. Is he was like, yeah, I played 7-8 minutes in the fourth quarter. They're like, you played the whole thing. He's like, oh, I didn't even know that. They're stretching him to where they're like, you're going to be out there, and if you can handle it, you're going to handle it. If you can't handle it, you're still going to be out there.
Right.
Like, you're still going to do it.
To me, the crazy things that Sean Elliott has now dubbed it the dad block, where he doesn't jump, and it's just like playing against your kid when he was 6 years old in the Nerf upstairs in the game room. And he's like getting more and more of those. Last night there was an alley-oop that was way short. It should not have been a dunk. but he caught it and was still able to dunk it. There's some physical things that are just amazing. And it's you see one every night. But to me, the handle, the left hand, he just moves smoothly like a guard. Once he falls down about 4 times a game. It's kind of like watching
it's not like Joel Embiid falling
the
though.
deer in
Learning how to walk.
Yeah, the baby Bambi learning how to walk. Once he gets all his coordination and grows a little bit and puts a little more muscle on, look out.
Well, I heard someone the other day. I was listening to ESPN. I forgot who it was. It wasn't Perkins because he's an idiot, but it's one of the smart ones. He said that in the next 3 years, I think it was Woj. He said in the next 3 years, Wemby is going to be the best offensive and defensive player that the NBA has, and he might be the best NBA defensive player that the league has ever seen.
Maybe
in his career.
And I was thinking that might be a little hyperbole, but then like just watching the game against the Pacers where he didn't get a block very early on in that game, but Miles Turner was trying to go at him. I think it was Miles Turner. And he just altered essentially a 2-foot shot that turned out to be a ball that went straight up in the air and straight down. And then you look at the box score and the Pacers can't hit the broadside of the barn. They're 1 of 13 in the first quarter, but then I'm thinking, well, maybe they're shooting all these threes because they know if they go inside, they're not going to have a chance. And so just even that one play, the message that it sends to the other team and how it alters a basketball game. You take a team that's probably used to, with their size, getting a lot of stuff around the basket. All of a sudden, you're turning them into a jump shooting team, and it wasn't working out for the Pacers, and they found themselves in an early hole. I don't know if it was just that one play, but, if you're 1 of 13 from 3-pointers, you would think, okay, we got to try something different. Well, maybe you're not, and there's a reason why you're not, because there's a guy that's 7'3" with 8 feet wingspan in the paint.
You can see how guys. I'm not going to make that decision.
Right?
They go in there and I'm going to just pull it back out or whatever they do.
SGA didn't do that on Thursday. He just kept getting swatted when he was trying to go underneath Wemby. It didn't happen, but
it's fun to watch.
It is. It leads to a better discussion as well. The two of how long is this rebuild going to take? Because Pop said before the season, this group is going to dictate how long the rebuild takes. Now that we're away from the crap of the first 3 months of the season, I think that was an failed experiment, and since then they've been playing a lot better since the calendar turned to 2024. I think that this ascension from Wemby, this rise in his game and showing maybe how much he can play, how good defensively he can be individually, his game is rising, the expectations for this team. And I would be surprised if it didn't maybe move up the timeline for how good this team is going to be and how fast they're going to be it.
Depends on 2 things. One, who they take with their pick, and do they get Toronto's pick? If Toronto finishes outside the top 6, San Antonio gets that pick. So they could have number 2 and number 7, number 3 and number 8, number whatever. And it depends on who those picks are. I think this year, despite the fact they told us it was important to win, the way they started experimenting with Sohan that lasted way too long and all those other things, I think they wanted to see who, between Devin, Keldon, Jeremy, Malachi, Wesley, Champagny, Barlow, who of those guys are going to be with Wemby for the build? Who can they put on the market? Who can they use with picks to help go get somebody else? Who's going to fit, who's not? And it's been a big experiment. I don't know the answer to those questions, but I do think they now start to know the answer to those questions.
Here's my question then, if that's the case. Why did they re-sign Devin before the season?
I think they had made up the decision. I think they had made up their mind with Devin that the money they gave him was good market value. No one's going to have a hard time paying him that if they want to use him in a trade, or that's a good value for him if they think he can play.
Yeah,
I think they think he can play.
They had to spend some money too because of where they were at with the cap. I mean, you can't
that's
have
fair,
contracts exceed a certain level or
the minimum.
Be below
you have
level.
You have to reach the floor of the spending.
Yes.
I think it's 90% of the cap or something like that.
I'm not sure. You're probably right. But did you get the sense, though, when Woj was talking about that did you get that he was insinuating that if they don't put people around him quickly that he's going to say fly?
I didn't. I think that I got the sense that there's no way for them to slow this freight train down. Like, Wemby is a freight train running downhill right now. His talent is something that I don't think any of us have seen in years. Since LeBron came into the league, there hasn't been a phenomenon like this. And I think that Wemby's ability and his relative anonymity of being overseas first and now coming over here, people are now finding out. And now the public is swelling like, oh my God, he's amazing. And now that all of that has come to the forefront, I think that Woj was implying that it's impossible for the Spurs not to build this up a little bit faster than they were.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. And I think, I may be wrong, but I think the Spurs are masters of relationship building. And I think it's evident that Pop and Wemby have a good relationship. There's trust both ways. The kid is incredibly mature for his age. And I think he trusts Pop. Now, I don't know about, I think he could get frustrated if this went on another year. But I also think the Spurs learned their lesson from Kawhi that they need to be in lockstep with their star and know what he's thinking at all times. They didn't know Kawhi was thinking the way Kawhi's uncle was thinking, and it went south. Because they always had somebody that agreed with that just fell in line. Tim, Manu, Tony, David Robinson. Those guys just let the Spurs do what they wanted to do. Kawhi was one of those stars that wanted to do it a little differently. I guarantee you, this offseason, Pop will go to Wemby and say, Devin, in or out? Jeremy, in or out? Malachi, in or out? Your team, what do you want us to do? And they work together. If you don't do that, it's insane. You have to be in lockstep with your star.
All right, let's get to Caitlin Clark. So Caitlin Clark broke Pistol Pete's scoring record. Whether Don wants to admit it or not, she is now the highest scoring man or woman in NCAA history. I know.
No, she's not. Pearl Moore is.
So Lynette Woodard, Kelsey Plum, Pete Maravich, she has broken all of their records in the past couple of weeks. I don't want to get into the point of comparing records here.
You just said a misstatement of fact.
It's comparing apples to oranges.
No.
She has more points than he does. Does she?
But she's not the all-time leading scorer in NCAA history. That's Pearl Moore of Francis Marion, who has over 4,000 points, but she's not Division I. She's the leading scorer in all of Division I men's or women's.
Okay, thank you.
But that's important because I think you can say the difference between Pearl Moore at Francis Marion being a different classification than Caitlin Clark is just as significant as Caitlin Clark to Pete Maravich.
I don't like I said. I don't. You voiced your opinion on Thursday about not being able to compare it. It's apples to oranges. It really is. It's men's and women's. It's 3 years compared to 4 years. It's Maravich being the all-star on a bad team versus Caitlin Clark being a great player on a great team. It's different. It's different in that way.
Millions of ways.
That's why I don't want to get into the comparing of records here. She did it. That's what it is. But I wanted to get into the larger discussion of her impact on women and her impact on the women's game. To me, she has the potential to have the same impact on the women's game, and I think already is having the impact that Steph Curry did on the NBA. Kids can see someone that they actually can aspire to be. You see LeBron, and you're not, and little kids aren't going to be like, maybe I'm not going to be 6'8" and 275 pounds. But you see a 6'2", 6'3" Steph Curry shooting from God knows where, and you can aspire to be that person. I think little girls can look at Caitlin Clark and what she's done and be like, that's attainable for me, and can perhaps coax more children into loving the game of basketball.
No question. She's great for the game of basketball. She's an amazing talent. I've said I think she's the most must-see TV player in the NCAA tournament, male or female. She's the greatest scorer in the history of women's basketball, and I think she's going to do great things for the WNBA. I mean, you look at what they sold out every game.
And the ticket was for like $700 on the resale market.
All season.
For college games.
They sold out every game of Carver Hawkeye. They sold 56,000 seats in the football stadium for one of their games. She's the most popular athlete in the Midwest in any sport right now.
Relative to her peers, she's the most popular athlete in. I would say she's the most popular athlete in the NCAA right now.
For sure.
Man or woman.
For sure.
Chuck, what about you?
Well, I mean, to me, it's nuanced because I think she's growing the game, and I think it's important too. And I saw it with my own two eyes when I brought my daughter, who was playing, little dribblers basketball, to daddy-daughter work day, and we went inside the WNBA locker room, and to see my daughter's eyes when I let her ask some questions to Becky Hammond, and to see the impact that, as a little dribbler, and, that carried her all the way to her freshman year in high school playing basketball because of what the women were doing in the WNBA, that my daughter got to see that firsthand. But I think this is a little broader in terms of what Caitlin's doing, because I have a friend of mine who's a huge sports fan that lives in Minneapolis, and he went to a game recently in Minneapolis that Caitlin Clark was at, and he was showing me pictures. I mean, the place was jam-packed. I mean, it was boy, girl, monkey, squirrel, old, young, you name it, everybody was there. And it was a happening event. And so who amongst us would not think that that's a good thing in terms of growing the sport?
Yeah,
sure.
and I mean, women's basketball has always been the thing that's second to men's basketball. I mean, even in the 70s and 80s, you really just didn't think about women's basketball that way. And what players like Lisa Leslie and Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird have done for the game is astronomical. But now you look at this whole other generation of people who are the TikTok generation, the reels, the 1 minute attention span. They are going to and they have gravitated towards the personality and the person that Caitlin Clark is, and are now going to want to be her. And it's something that can never be understated, the impact that can have on the game.
Right. And more importantly, I don't think we've touched on this. It'd be another sport that people can gamble on more than they do now.
I'm not saying that I put that I took Iowa -8 yesterday against Ohio State, but I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm not.
See what I mean? Would you have done that 2 years ago?
People will gamble on anything, Chuck.
Right.
As
I'm finding out.
I have a friend, to wrap this thing up, I have a friend who texted me yesterday in our little group chat, and he was like, guys, I got to bet in on Swedish hockey. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Degenerate.
I was like, what?
Degenerate.
He's like, guys, the line's way off. I got this. He won.
Okay, well then that's right.
I just thought it was really funny that he texted me, I got a lock for Swedish hockey. I was like, oh my God, he's this dude. All right, that's all we got for you today on this episode of Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We will be right back here on Thursday for some more Cowboys and Spurs talk and, anything else that comes to mind. Also, actually on the way out, I wanted to say this. 1, congratulations to Jason Kelsey on retirement. And 2, we lost Chris Mortensen
too bad. Yeah,
this weekend. I did want to touch on that. I forgot about it before because it wasn't on the rundown. But lost Chris Mortensen. I always cry when these things happen. I cry when Stuart Scott died. I cried when Pedro Gomez died tragically. I cried when Chris Mortensen died because as I was growing up, I looked up to guys like Mort, guys like Shefty, guys, all the names. And so he had his battle with cancer and he overcame it, and he died yesterday at 72. So our hearts go out to his wife, Mickey, and the entire ESPN family and his family. He's one of the best to ever do it. So
No doubt.
all right, that's all we got for you on the Sneakers Cleats podcast. We'll see you on Thursday.